So in this video, I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about the Fischer Space Pen refill. This is a pressurized ballpoint refill that works under nearly any circumstances. So upside down, underwater, in the rain, so on and so forth. And they last for a very long time. The ink in this just will write and write and write for, I forget the exact length, but it's like 5 or 6 miles or something like that of writing. So we have a refill that's pressurized, so it works pretty much under any circumstances. It's nicely sealed, so it doesn't really dry out, which means you can get one of these refills that's 5, 10, 15, even more than that years old, and it might still work. In fact, there's a pretty good chance it'll still work. And then the last thing that's interesting is that the date is stamped or printed somewhere on almost all these refills. This is 7/18, so July 2018. So you have a refill that has basically a design that's been unchanged since the 60s. And then it has the date printed on almost all of them. So you have some really interesting circumstances here where you could look through the history of these refills and the pens that use the refills if you care to. So I've been playing around with some Fischer Space Pens. If you buy them used, there's a good chance you'll find the original refill in them. I wouldn't guarantee that the previous owner didn't flip the refill, but it's tough to run it through one of these refills. And if you do, I imagine you're going to change it out immediately. So the old pens tend to have old refills in them. And if you look and see the date, you can get an idea of how old the refill is, and you can see, oh, it still works, it doesn't work, and then how has it changed over time. Done a little bit of testing here, and I looked through the Fischer Space Pen refills I have. So the main one they have, just quickly, is called the PR4. That's black ink medium. There's also another one that's called the PR1. That is blue medium. And they have a bold and a fine, which is the PR whatever and the PR something else. And they have red and I don't think they have that many other colors, but they do have red. So there are other PR refills. It's a PR, it's just like, I believe it just means pressurized refill. But the PR4 and the PR1 are the main ones. So here is a set of the refills that I have access to and a quick writing sample from them. So you could see the newest one I have is from 2020 or so. So pretty new, May 2020. See a nice dark coloring there. No problems with the line. I slipped a little bit writing it, but that has nothing to do with the ink itself. Then you could see much older ones. Here's one that's still writing from 1978. Here's one from the 80s. I couldn't exactly pin down when it was. So it's that the printing on some of them, if it was handled a lot, I believe the oils in your fingers will sort of corrode the ink over time. The ink on the refill, not the ink of the refill. Here is one from 1979, so March 1979, that's writing really nicely. And then this one, it's a Y2k. They had a Y2k pen, and I had the refill from that, but it's undated. So I'm guessing it's probably from 1999 or so. And then the last one that's undated is the Infinium, which you can't get at the refill. So you can pause that and look at the video and look through it if you want to get more of a feel for it. But you could see, I just want to do some quick writing samples here. This one I've been using, 7/18. This is in a very old, this is called the G4. That's the gold striped version of the CH4, which is the skinny astronaut pen. And so this is whatever I said, 2018, writes really nicely, nice dark line, good smoothness, no interruptions. Open up a different pen. This is just an old beater that has seen better days. And you can see that pretty corroded inside. Basically this is not supposed to come off. This is to be epoxied to this, but with the old Fischer pens, they always break down, and that's the #1 cause for issue there. Everything here is really corroded and dirty, but if we look at the refill, we can see, okay, so it's got a very old font, and There you go. Could just make it out there. $8.78. So that's that blue one up top here. And this pen is in very rough shape, but should write. So this is $8.78. The biggest problem with this pen is when you push down, the two pieces will separate. That has to get repaired. I need to clean it off and get some epoxy in there or something like that. But this one still writes. This refill is approaching, what, 50 years old, 45 years old, something like that. And it really writes. It doesn't have the smoothness of before. And it doesn't have the, clearly there's been some fading to the color. I'm assuming there's been some fading. I don't know what the 1978 shade of blue was. Maybe this is it, but I'm guessing it's faded a little bit. And the line does not have as much integrity as it does now, but it still works. And that's a pretty impressive feat. The pen clearly has had the clip ripped off and it's got dented, but still works pretty well. Doesn't always click down perfectly, but not so bad. This is a this is a B4, I believe, and this is the black striped. This one we see a refill from, let's see if we can zoom in on that. So Fischer Space Pen, you see the more futuristic font there. It's been italicized. This is from 3/79, so March 79, pressurized refill, PR4 black, patent number, and then again, clearly a different font from the other ones. So interesting to see the design changes over time as well. The metal, I think it's brass. At some points it seems more coppery, like more orange. Then they move to more of a true, like a gold colored brass or a bronze colored, whatever you want to call it. And this one again was, I believe, 1979. And it still writes quite nicely. Not as smooth as a new PR4, but really quite smooth. And you can see it has good integrity of the lines. And then here is, again, this is the modern one on the left there. Definitely a darker color, more smoothness, better lines. But this is not bad at all, especially considering the age of the refill. So holding up quite nicely. When you see a refill in a pen, I would generally assume that the pen is of the same age as the refill. Maybe the pen is a little bit older and the refill, went into the pen, as a second refill or third refill. But I think it's usually a pretty good assumption that the pen and the refill are going to be the same. I don't think people are selling used pens on eBay from, the 90s or 2000s and then somehow finding 40-plus-year-old refills to put in them. For me, that seems unlikely. I guess it's possible, but I'm generally assuming when you buy a Fischer Space Pen, the refill in there is original or from the same time as the pen. But just my operating assumption. Here's an older design from Fischer. I don't even know the name for this one. It's not a true astronaut pen. It's not like the CH4 or one of those, or the AG7. It doesn't have a side click. It just has a top button, and the build quality is not as nice as it was, but it does very clearly here. Let's see if we could make it out. It does say, you can see Fischer USA rhodium plate. And there's that Fischer right there. So clearly a Fischer pen. Looks like a cheaper version of some of the ones we've used before. This is one of the ones where the refill itself seems very coppery. There clearly was some printing here, but now all you have is the leftover markings from some fingerprints and how the sort of metal just corroded over time and it kind of wore that paint away. This is the one I assumed was from the 1980s because of the design of the pen. I couldn't tell you for a fact that was true, but based on the design of the pen and then what I could glean from the refill, which is very little, it just seems like a 1980s pen for me. So Maybe I'm wrong, but this one writes very well, smoother than the other from the 1978 PR4. Sorry, PR1 rather, PR1. Nice and smooth, good line quality, pretty impressive. I don't love the pen itself. It doesn't have the same build quality or the nice looks of something like that. I mean, here's it next to the AG7. You see it clearly different. And here's it next to, you know, like this B4, but again, the CH4 would have the same profile. It's skinnier than this, and it doesn't have as nice of a clip. Doesn't have a side button. It's definitely not as nice. And then I think we know what AG7 can be look like. And lastly, this is the Infinium. This one, I think the whole thing is supposed to be filled with, sorry, this is the Y2k, sorry. And this one has a refill in it, which is from a third party. So this is Dynasty Collection. I don't even know what that means. But it says for Fischer refills, clearly a PR4. It was just sold through a third party. I don't really know. The Y2k pen looks a lot like the Infinium, but it was made at some point around Y2k, I think in the 1998, 99 area around there. Capped. It comes apart, unlike the Infinium. It could post, so you have actually a fairly large pen. And this one writes really nicely. In fact, being 23 years old, it writes not quite like new, but really quite smooth. And this is the Y2k, and I think it says, nah, I thought it said, oh yeah, there we go. I knew it said it somewhere. This actually says Y2k Space Ball Pen. Yeah, Space Ball Pen by Fischer. This one had an imprint on it, which is why I probably got it for so cheap, but writes really nicely. Too bad the refill age is on there. But there you go. This is just a quick fun look at some Fischer pens, but in this set of circumstances, really the Fischer refills that I think are so interesting. Again, maybe it's just academic. Maybe the fact that a refill can last 40 plus years, it doesn't really matter, but I found it to be pretty interesting little alley to go down, especially if you're into the space pen and the cool history behind them. So thanks for watching.